Om Shanti, how are you? Some girls get really confused when they find themselves being attracted to another girl. So they think there is something seriously wrong with them. The same happens with some guys getting attracted to another guy. So maybe the society still hates it, but maybe it's legal now in many parts of the world to have homosexual relationships. But still, as I said, society still hates it and will hate it forever. Not only homosexual relationships but also heterosexual relationships are not approved by the family members based on racial, social and discrimination and also financial discrimination. So these homosexuals face a lot of problems from their family members and from the society. So they will end up asking this question all the time to themselves. Why is this happening only to me? Why am I like this? Why am I not like all other men and women out there? Why am I created like this, God? So what is the reason for this? To understand this homosexuality, it would be very easy if you relate that with the example I'm about to say. It's a syndrome called FAST, which means foreign accent syndrome. What happens is, while they speak their normal accent, in the middle they start speaking some foreign accent, and it is impossible for them to get back to their normal accent. Nobody knows how it happens. For example, a girl living in Australia all of a sudden starts speaking English with Irish accent. She has never visited Irish in her life, but still she is able to speak it very fluently, and it is impossible for her to get back to Australian accent. So how is this happening? Likewise, you might have heard of Tourette's syndrome. So a girl with this Tourette's syndrome, she was repeating some kind of behaviors every 10 to 15 seconds while she was speaking, and those interactions, they are like winking like this and whistling like this. I don't know how to whistle, but she whistles very nicely, and she says it started while she couldn't even speak at such an early age. While she was around 1 or 2 years, she was winking and she was blowing the whistle, and these characteristics represent that of a womanizer, which means she was obviously a womanizer in her previous birth. She was a man. So that predominant character somehow got activated in this life, in this birth. Likewise with foreign accent syndrome, somehow their previous birth, that particular accent, that gets activated, but she doesn't remember anything from her past birth. She is not bringing any new behavior, but only accent gets activated. Likewise, if some person is deeply in love with somebody in a birth. For example, if a guy deeply loves a girl, but he doesn't marry her, he may have started loving her before marriage or after marriage. I mean, after marrying another girl. So it could be something that he couldn't get her married. So obviously he would be obsessed with that girl because there's no chance that he is going to live with that girl. So whenever he sees his wife, whenever he sees the negativity in his wife, then obviously his mind goes to that special girl. So he spends whole his life thinking or fantasizing about that girl. So what happens in the next birth is, now he became a girl because that's the law God reveals. A soul takes birth as a man and a woman alternately. So there is no chance a man takes birth as a man continuously for more than 2 births. So obviously he might have become a woman in his next birth, but that girl, she has taken the next birth as a girl itself. Now that's the karmic account he created in his previous birth, so it has to be settled. So somehow he needs to that character in his previous birth needs to get activated. So whether it's homosexuality or heterosexuality, if you think deeply, then you could find that even in your life it was activated by some external factors. It might be looking at pornography or looking at hot scenes in a movie, or some friends speaking about sex, or child abuse. So these factors help in the activation of the sexuality of any person. So these factors repeatedly activates our sexuality. So if there is no strong karmic account from our previous birth, then obviously we will be developing heterosexuality based on the gender we are. But if you have a strong karmic account with another person of the same gender, obviously somehow your previous birth sexual attraction gets activated. So you spent your whole life obsessing about a girl, and that girl is still a girl but with a different body, but she is still a female. So now, in order for your karmic account to be settled with that girl, you need to be homosexual. Just like in the previous examples, the accent from the previous birth got activated, some behaviors from the previous birth got activated. Here your sexual preference from your previous birth got activated. Now, even though you are in a female body, you are still attracted to females. And just like a heterosexual person, he will be attracted to some person in particular very strongly. Likewise, even with homosexuals, though they have this attraction towards people of his own gender, but still he or she will be strongly attracted to a very particular person, and this attraction will be 1,000 times stronger compared to the heterosexual attraction. And the pain caused by the love breakups between homosexuals is also thousands and millions of times greater than that of heterosexuals. In addition to that, they need to face hell a lot of problems from the society before they manage to get together. But in most parts of the world, it is even impossible for them to live legally. They may have secret affair after getting married to some person of another gender. They will be having secret affairs with the person of their interest. Even then, if they get caught, they will be harassed emotionally, sometimes even physically, like hell. But why is this happening? Why do they face such problems? So, in India, even for heterosexual partners, it is impossible for them to get married or to live together even after marriage if they belong to a totally different caste. In certain places, they will even kill the person involved with such heterosexual love. You may say that society itself is wrong in treating people like that. It may be wrong, but the reality is, it is because they got so much addicted to sexual thoughts in their previous birth. They need to get punished in this birth. Why? Is having sex a sin or what? Yes, it is a sin. No religion says it directly. No religion says it very strongly. Of course, in Bible it is said that looking at a girl with lustful thoughts itself is a prostitution. It is said, but no churches teach that. It doesn't matter whether you have sex with a person of the opposite gender or with the person of the same gender. It is still a sin. It doesn't matter if you have sex with your wife or someone outside your marriage. Both are considered sins. It is because you started having sex with your own wife that you become so addicted to the taste of it that you started having sex with others in the future or in your future births. That's how addictive this sex is. It's the number one addiction that whole human beings are facing right now, but nobody speaks about it. The reason for getting punished for having sex will be explained very clearly if you understand this 5,000 year time cycle. So this world was heaven in the beginning and we were deities. So deities were also human beings like us, but they didn't have these sinful acts or sinful thoughts like lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. They were filled with divine qualities like love, peace, happiness and purity, because of which they were blessed with everlasting wealth, everlasting health and everlasting peace and blissfulness. So that is why it was called heaven. For the first 2500 years it continues to be heaven. Then it is followed by hell for the last 2500 years, and it is in hell we started experiencing pain, but while we were in heaven all we experienced is nothing but happiness. Whatever we see gives us happiness. Whatever we listen gives us happiness. For the first 2500 years, we were utterly selfless. The reason for that is we considered ourselves to be the soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows. It is the soul that controls this body. The body is perishable, but the soul is eternal, imperishable. So they were conscious of it naturally, because of which they didn't fall for lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego, and all other sensual pleasures. But they were filled with blissfulness, mainly because the true nature of soul itself is everlasting blissfulness. Since they were soul conscious, they were experiencing this blissfulness continuously. It comes from within, so they don't depend on the external things for them to be happy. Of course, everything is filled with person and things that give happiness, but still the majority of happiness comes from within, from their soul, from their soul consciousness. But after the completion of first 2500 years, actually it's a 5000 year time cycle called Kalpa, so the first half will be enjoying the blissfulness out of soul consciousness. And for the next 2500 years, we started experiencing pain because we have already lost soul consciousness and become body conscious, because of which we couldn't experience the blissfulness that came out from being soul consciousness. So what happens now is we started to depend on the external things or person to experience happiness in the form of sensual pleasures. But unfortunately, you need to work really hard to derive pleasure from the external environment. Not only that, those pleasure that you derive from the external environment is not going to last longer. Actually, it's going to last very temporarily. So, in order to retain those pleasure, we have started committing many sins, because of which we are experiencing punishment for those sins in the form of diseases, poverty, natural calamities, world wars, and so on. So God comes in the end. This is where God resides all the time. This is the golden red colored light world called the soul world, or Parandam or Parlok. That is where not only God but also we souls before taking birth reside along with God without body. So after entering heaven, that is after taking birth in heaven, we reside in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have this habit of wearing religious symbols in between the eyebrows. So we were ever wealthy, ever healthy while we were in heaven. But the health, the wealth, peace, everything very slowly decreases. But we don't experience any pain or suffering while we were in heaven, but the quantity of pleasure, that decreases. After the completion of heaven, after coming to hell, we also start experiencing pain and suffering. What is the reason? Because in the beginning of heaven, our soul will be filled with power, 100%. The power of the soul decreases gradually. And now in hell, after committing sins, especially lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego, the power decreases so fast, and the number one culprit that steals the power of the soul is lust, which is why God says lust is the number one enemy in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. All religions support marriage, but no religions support love before marriage. You know why? Because after marriage, maybe you have sex with your wife, but as soon as you get married, as soon as you are a married couple, you no longer have attraction for each other. Maybe you will have attraction towards the opposite gender outside marriage, but within marriage you will not have that attraction. So, but if you were in love before marriage or after marriage in extramarital affairs, you would be obsessing about the other person all the time. So that reduces the soul power so drastically. For you to be able to complete this 5,000 year time cycle, you need to have some power. So that is why this sexual preference from your past birth gets activated, so that though you got attracted to the same gender, it is very difficult for you to even express that in the first place because of the social stigma attached to it. So if the other person doesn't agree, it's going to hurt you. But if the other person is going to say that to everybody around him or her, it's going to hurt you pretty bad, that you may even end up committing suicide. So the only way to escape all these sufferings is to put an end to your sexual thoughts altogether. That's the only way you can escape from the punishment because of the sin of being obsessed with the other person throughout your life in your past birth. Many transgenders prefer that. Though they are attracted to the other person very strongly compared to that of heterosexual person, but still they try to suppress that attraction, mainly because they know even if they express their feeling for the other person, so the chance of getting married to that person is very low. Even if they get married, the problems they are going to face as a couple from the society is going to be very horrible. Even after facing those horrible things, majority of the times the other person leave you in the middle. So anyway, you are going to end up with pain, with lots of pain. So after undergoing such pain for some time, they would finally come to a decision that they are not going to act on their sexual attraction. Some transgenders, they divert their focus onto God. They become so pious that they involve themselves in devotional activities. Despite being punished by having the sexual attraction towards the same gender, because they're able to suppress that sexual attraction altogether, instead of getting punishment, They are being rewarded to a great extent. People, Hindus, they even consider them equal to God. That's the power of purity. That's the power of becoming pure. And they are forced to become pure by various sufferings. Same is the case with the heterosexual attraction between people of different castes. If they want to act upon their sexual attraction towards the other person who belong to a totally different caste, especially upper caste, so their life is at stake if they are going to act on it. So the only way to keep them safe is to give up that sexual attraction in the first place. Why are they being punished like that? For the same reason that they were obsessed with the other person in their previous birth, that the karmic account is so strong that it continues in the next birth despite being born in the entirely different communities. So it is now impossible for them to get married. If they did, they have to face a lot of problems. So only solution to all these problems is to put full stop to sex altogether. Is it possible to do that? Because people think it is nature, it is the strongest emotion of human. Yes, it's true. But it is equally true, it is sinful. Just because we are addicted doesn't make it sinless. So, how should we put an end to sex? It's pretty simple, but following it religiously is going to help you out of this problem. What is that? Instead of being body conscious, again elevate your consciousness to being a soul. So become soul conscious, because you are a soul. That's the truth. You are not this perishable body, you are this imperishable soul that lasts forever. The soul takes birth after birth, takes different bodies, becomes a man, becomes a woman, becomes a man. So it goes on forever. It is because we committed sins in our past birth in a different body that we are being punished in this birth in a totally different body. Not because of the body, but because of the sins created by this soul. So, God says it is by becoming body conscious that you are committing more and more sins, and also you are being punished for the same. Now become soul conscious, end your body consciousness. But we do not have the strength to be soul conscious as we were in heaven. So how do you regain soul consciousness? God says, I am the only one who is soul conscious forever. Why? Because God doesn't enter this birth and death cycle. He doesn't take birth as a baby from a mother's womb. He doesn't take a body of his own. Just 100 years before the destruction of this old world or Kali Yuga, God enters an old man's body and he names him Brahma, and he delivers this divine knowledge through Brahma's mouth. This knowledge is called Murli, which is available absolutely free of cost in all Raj Yoga meditation centers that's widely spread across the globe. Also, the Murli is available in websites and several YouTube channels. I'll be giving the links of those in the description below this video. Please make use of it, because that's the Murli is the only knowledge given directly by God now. And this Murli is the only knowledge that transforms the sinful human being of the old world to the sinless, pure, divine beings, deities. So, just to transform us to deities, God comes once in 5,000 years towards the end of the world. Why? To make us eligible to enter heaven. How? By becoming pure, by burning all these sinful thoughts that we accumulated in our mind from our past births. The more we remember God as a point of light, because He is like a point of light, just like us, because He is also a soul. That is why He is called the Supreme Soul, Param Atma. So we need to consider ourselves to be the soul and remember our Father, the Supreme Soul, God Shiva. The same God Shiva is called Heavenly Godfather by Christians, Allahu by Muslims. God is one and He comes only once, and the knowledge of God is also one. It is given directly by God only in the end. It is only the knowledge of God that has the capacity to make man as pure as God, free from all these five vices. No religion or religious text has the capacity to purify the soul. If it does, there's no need for God to come in the end. It is because God comes in the end of each kalpa that Bible and Hindu scriptures says about the arrival of God in the end. Just because they do not know who God is, they wrongly says that it is Sri Krishna who is going to come as Kalki in the end. It is the second coming of Jesus that's going to happen in the end. But in reality, nobody comes for the second time. Of course, the soul will take several rebirths, whether it's Sri Krishna or Jesus Christ. They have to undergo the rebirths. There's no exception except God. Because God doesn't take birth as a newborn baby. He doesn't die. If somebody is born out of a mother's womb, they have to die. Maybe out of our love for our religion, we may think that Sri Ram went up directly to heaven, or Jesus Christ climbed up the ladder to heaven. But that didn't happen for real. It is us who is climbing up the ladder to heaven. How? By remembering God, by purifying our soul. That's the only way to enter heaven. And heaven is not up there. The same world that we live in now is going to be converted to heaven in the near future. All we need to do is to make us eligible to enter heaven, and that's pretty easy. All we need to do is to remember God as much as possible, and also in addition we need to remember the knowledge points of God. And another thing we need to take care of is to protect ourselves from the influence of the environment of this world, because everything you see here from this world is going to bring up those five vices again and again. we have to destroy those vices completely. That is why we need to protect ourselves from the environment. So we need to keep our mind busy with the knowledge of God and the remembrance of God throughout the day. By doing so, you will find surprisingly that you are able to conquer lust gradually. So you would have conquered lust to the extent that at one point the person you are deeply attracted to, when he or she comes in front of you, you will no longer experience any sort of attraction, even to a minor degree. So that's the kind of transformation this knowledge and remembrance of God is going to bring. So please make use of it. This knowledge is available in all Raja Yoga meditation centers. So rush to the nearest Raja Yoga meditation centers, or go to the websites and YouTube videos I give in the description below, and transform your life so that you escape the punishments for all the sins that you have committed for the past 2500 years, and also you are purifying yourself, and you are going to enter heaven. You are going to enjoy the blissfulness, wealthiness, healthiness of heaven for the next 2500 years. And the only effort you need to enjoy those 2500 years of heaven life is just remember God as a point of light. That's it. This is the only solution to all the problems that arise not only out of sex but also out of anger, attachment, ego, jealousy, revenge, everything. The more you remember God as a point of light, you are going to become more pure. The more you become pure, you are going to remain peaceful within. You are going to remain blissful within. So no matter what happens around you, nothing is going to affect the peacefulness and blissfulness that you experience within by remembrance of God. So it is by experiencing those blissfulness and peacefulness now by following God's knowledge and by remembrance of God that you are able to enjoy the blissfulness and peacefulness along with the prosperity that you experience in heaven for the next 2500 years. So why waste any more time? Rush to the nearest Raja Yoga meditation center and reap as much benefit as you can. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit on the thumbs up button, and if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and hit on the notification bell so that you will be notified of our upcoming videos. And if you have any suggestion, please leave it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And one more caution I forgot to add is the next generation is going to be filled with homosexuals, as mentioned in many parts of Bible. Why? Because in the previous generation the world was not so worse compared to the present situation, but still we are seeing many people with homosexual characteristics. But now the world is filled with lust. You can see all sorts of extramarital affairs everywhere. So think about the punishment these people are going to face in the next birth. So save yourself. So don't expect to be punished in the next birth, because it sometimes happens. Actually, mostly it happens in this birth itself. because God is capable of doing anything. He can activate your previous birth just like that. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching.